You're listening to Backchat, the podcast that takes you backstage for a chat every Friday on all major platforms. Recorded in Dublin, Ireland, and broadcast around the world. Join Michael O'Reilly and his guest weekly to discuss the entertainment realm and all of its secrets with leading musicians, actors, and entertainers. Before this episode begins, follow us on Instagram at back.chatpodcast and check out our Facebook. But for now, you're listening to Backchat.
Hello and welcome back to Backchat, the podcast that takes you backstage for a chat every week on all major platforms. First of all, I want to give a huge thanks to everyone for listening, streaming and sharing Back Tackle, which debuted last week. The feedback seems to be kind of good. I think it's breaking up the formality of the episodes between Backchat and now we have Back Tackle. So we've got some diversity and I think it's going to do well. And let's see what's in store for next Friday's episode with Sean. But for now, I have a very special guest, and this week's guest has toured the world selling out arenas with Boyzone, one of the biggest selling singles artists in music chart history. While selling a massive 25 million records worldwide, he also featured in Britain's most popular soap opera, Coronation Street, establishing a successful acting career. Now, pandemics aside, he performs with Boyzlife, a supergroup he founded with Brian McFadden, with their debut album Strings Attached hitting iTunes #1 on the charts. So without further ado, I want to introduce Keith Duffy. Keith, how are you?
What an intro, Mikey. Thank you very much for that. I mean, people are going to think I wrote that myself.
Well, you did. You emailed it through there last week.
Yeah, you weren't supposed to say that live on air.
Sorry. We'll cut that bit out.
Make sure you edit that bit out, yeah.
No problem. How have you been? How's lockdown been for you?
Well, lockdown, I suppose, for everybody has been in different stages. For me, it most certainly has been in different stages. Stage one came about for me. I think I was touring the UK with Brian McFadden, as you just said. We're in a band called Boyzlife now, and we've been going 4 years. And we were in the middle of a big world tour. We started early February. We had 24 shows under our belt, and we were now on the 15th of March. Things in Ireland were locking down and closing down a lot quicker than they were in the UK. We had no concept really of what the lockdown was like, because in the UK life was as normal. I was posting pictures from our stage performance at night on my social medias, and I was getting text messages from friends of mine in the music business in Dublin, kind of saying, "Man, you have to stop posting your pictures of your shows at night. Really? All the bands in Ireland are out of work at the moment. Everybody's in lockdown. It's not right that you guys are performing away in crowded areas when we're all in lockdown." And I'm kind of going, "Well, man, listen, it's a different ball game over here. I'm just doing my gig. I'm just doing my job." As soon as Boris Johnson or whoever it might be, who's at the helm at the time, as soon as they tell us to stop gigging, we'll stop gigging. Yeah. But we're not being educated very well over here at all compared to what obviously is going on in Ireland. And they said, "Yeah, well, look, listen, you live here. Your family lives in Dublin." And it doesn't look right that everybody is in lockdown here and you're working away. And I said, "Well, look, I appreciate you pointing that out, but we're going to keep cracking on until we're told otherwise." Again, just ignorance of this pandemic. We had really no idea what was going on. That was a Monday, the 16th of March. We were in Manchester on a day rest, moving on to Huddersfield the next day. We had a night off on the 16th. Obviously, St. Patrick's Day is the 17th of March, and we were doing a big concert in Huddersfield on Patrick's Day. So Boris Johnson addressed the nation at about 5 o'clock on the 16th of March, and he basically said, "Look, there's a pandemic in the world. We're going to have to look at public gatherings. We're going to have to, put some rules and basic kind of ideas in place." But he didn't really enforce anything. It was only suggestions. He said, don't go to public gatherings or do, but be careful, or, we won't be able to provide emergency services if you're at a public gathering, but if there's emergency, obviously we'll send them, So he was he was afraid of his life to actually take control of what he needed to do. So it was at that time that Brian and I, we were on the phone that night. Brian lives in Manchester and I was staying in a hotel. And I rang Brian. I said, look, man, we're going to have to make an executive decision on this.
down.
Boris Johnson is not giving anybody the right kind of guidance. I'm talking to people at home in Ireland. This is going to be worldwide. This is going to be a massive problem. And we need to be seen to make sure that we're protecting the people that work with us, to protect our fans, people that are coming along to support us. Yeah. So we're going to have to just postpone a few shows for now until we see what's going on. So he agreed with me, and we sent an email out to all our musicians and our crew, and we said, and we put it up on our websites and on our social media platforms to say to the fans, look, we're very, very sorry, but in the interest of your own safety, our safety, and our crew's safety, we're going to have to postpone the next shows immediately, and we don't know when they're going to be postponed to. Watch out for further notice. And man, that was the 16th of March, and now here we are in nearly in December. So I mean, it's been a crazy time. But to go back to the point I was making, there's been different stages of lockdown. So that was a Monday. I managed to get a flight from Manchester that night at 10:40 back to Dublin. Yeah. Thinking I was coming home for a couple of weeks. Very excited about the fact coming home to spend some quality time with the family, because I'm on the road all the time, and we don't get a lot of great family time together. So I was looking forward to that. But obviously one day grew into a week grew into a month, and then it grew into months. But we've been very lucky. We live in a nice house, we have a nice garden, so I'd forgotten about the house I lived in. I'd forgotten about the garden that we had, because I kind of work so hard and away from home so often. It kind of got me back in touch. My home, my house became my home again, and my garden became my kingdom again. And I reconnected with the family, and it took a while. Like the first week or two, I kind of felt like an outsider. They had their routine, and that routine didn't involve me.
You hadn't seen that for so long.
And I hadn't been part of that for so long. So it took them a while to kind of get used to me being around. It took me a while to kind of get used to being in their routine. Yeah. But once everything kind of settled down, we actually had a great time. We got to know each other again. I think, it's obvious that we're family, but I think we stopped being family and we start becoming friends. And for that, I really am grateful. That's the silver lining of the pandemic. It's given so many families that spend so much time away from each other the opportunity to spend unconditional time together, intensive time together, and you have rows and you fall out and you cry and you laugh, but it's all part of growing together. So that was the first stage of lockdown. It was kind of getting to know my family again, getting to know my home again, sitting playing games, just doing silly things, having way too much time on our hands to do whatever we wanted to do, to experiment in the kitchen, to do work in the garden, to decorate the house, whatever, and we really enjoyed that time together. And then we've been through a situation like an awful lot of Irish families are going through at the moment, when they have this contamination in their house called pyrite. Okay. So there's so many houses, there's over like 2,500 houses in the North County Dublin area that got their foundations built from a contaminated hardcore, which is in your foundation, and basically it makes your house structurally unsound. So you basically have to have your house put on stilts. You excavate all the foundation out of your house, and you basically rebuild your home. So you have to move out of the house for at least 4 months. And this all came upon us very, very soon after the first lockdown, and we had to move into we rented a house while our house is under construction, and the house we moved into is tiny in comparison to the house we live in.
What tiny?
I mean, it's absolutely tiny. The living room, the kitchen, the dining room are like probably 200 square feet. Like it's very, very small. The oven door doesn't close properly, and the extractor fan doesn't work. So if anybody's cooking anything, the whole room is full of steam. You can't.
I know where to knock over dinner now.
You have to keep the doors open in the middle of the winter just to be able to let the smoke out. But that's been a bit of a challenge. So lockdown phase 2 has been much more of a challenge than lockdown phase 1. Lockdown phase 2, some members of our family have not been well. My wife's dad hasn't been too well. My own father wasn't well. So that was a big worry through a time when you can't spend time with them. So it's been very, very, very challenging through lockdown too. But you've got to be positive. You've got to keep going. I'm looking to the future. I believe Pfizer and a couple of other pharmaceutical companies now are very, very close to a vaccine. That means getting back to work, please God, next year. Maybe March next year, back to work. And to be honest, you know, like everybody, I mean, some people are making a lot of money during these lockdown times because their business lends themselves well to what's going on. And there's some people then that have lost a fortune and that are really struggling. And you know, it's a flip of a coin, really. So the music business, the entertainment business is one of those businesses that's on its knees. And all our crew, our backstage crew, our musicians, even ourselves now, we're all starting to financially feel the struggle. So I'm looking forward to getting back to work. And I have to say, when I get back to work, I won't be taking a day off for about 6 years.
Well, one of the I think really interesting parts of how I've kind of looking into your guys' performances before lockdown, and then actually I was looking over like your Instagram post, and you're one of the only people in the world that got to do a pandemic concert. So you did a concert during the pandemic, socially distant.
Yeah, we did. Yeah.
What was that like?
Just one in Newcastle, actually. Yeah, we were like everybody. We were sitting at home, twiddling our thumbs, just dying to be given something to do, something to, not even for finances, literally just to keep the brain busy, you know, to keep the brain active and working. And there's this famous festival in Newcastle called the Oyster Festival. And usually there's 6,000 people there. And you've got all different stands, like a typical festival. You've all your different tents with your different foods and your different drinks and blah, blah, blah. This one is a particularly fancy one. It's usually kind of fancy. It's usually very, very classy dress, black tie, evening dresses and stuff like that. We were booked to do the gig, and like most of our gigs, it was cancelled, and then we got a call to say, look, we might be able to put this back on, would you still do it?
Cool.
And we says, well, how can we do it? You know, this is well, we're going to try and do it in a social distancing capacity. So it's going to be a very few people. Instead of 4,000 to 6,000, there's probably only going to be about 300 to 400 people there. But we want to go ahead and try and do the festival. So we said, look, as long as we can travel, you know, as long as it's the social distancing, you know, and we're not breaking any laws, we'd love to get back on stage.
Yeah.
So we went over, Brian and I. Our musicians travelled over as well. We set up. We did a sound check. The venue looked amazing. It was a big outdoor venue. Looking down on the venue from the hotel beside where our dressing room was, they basically had picnic tables, your standard picnic tables, kind of scattered around this field, surrounded then by marquees, which were different kind of merchandising stands and food and drink stands and what have you. And then they had kind of like fencing around each picnic table. So each picnic table was allowed 8 people.
Yeah.
And then they were fenced in to their picnic table.
Okay.
And these picnic tables, like I say, were sporadically spaced around the field. So when we went on stage, all you could see was like these spaced out people in these different kind of squared areas in the field. But I mean, nothing to do with us. But the guys at the time, they didn't have enough security to be able to kind of deal with the situation.
People,
And I think people were so fed up of being kind of socially distanced from everybody else that I remember, I think it was the 3rd or 4th song. I mean, Brian and I were kind of thinking the atmosphere here is going to be really difficult. It's going to be hard to get any type of a vibe off the audience because they're so spread out.
Yeah.
But by the 3rd song, every single person was front stage.
Oh,
every single person. It was like what it looked like standing on stage. There was about 3 people deep, the whole width of the stage, and it looked like a very badly sold concert at this stage. You know,
I can only imagine
when they were
that.
all kind of spread out, it didn't look too bad. But when they all came to the front of the stage, it just looked like a very badly sold show.
Like 3 lines of
which
people.
we've all had in our careers. Anybody you ever speak to, we've all had those days when you have you know, badly sold shows and the show must go on and all that. So we ended up having a great day. We put our heart and soul into the show. The people shouldn't have been on top of each other in front of the stage, but that was beyond our capacity. We couldn't help that, you know. The security were doing their best, and it ended up being a great day out. It ended up being just a great break from this whole pandemic.
Don't realise how much you kind of appreciate it. But one concert that did sell out is, and I'm gonna try provoke 2 stories through the course of the podcast, and I'm only going to say a few words, right? So the 3 words I'm going to say: Pavarotti, airplane, soundcheck. There's 3 words, right?
Yeah.
And can you tell me the story behind those 3 words?
To give a bit of background to the story, and it's a long story, so I'll try and give you the shortened version.
Sure.
We were. I think it was '98. We'd had a couple of very, very busy years. It was the peak of Boyzone. We'd broken all over the world at this stage. I mean, North America now was even starting to break with No Matter What, and we never really broke the States. So No Matter What was starting to break its way into the Billboard charts in America. So we really were looking strong. at the time. But the way it works in the music business, well, the way it worked back in the 90s, when you've got a product or a band like Boyzone, and they're breaking different territories every day, the different territories would be given a certain amount of time in your diary to fill with promotion, so that when you do go to do a concert tour, you're very well established and you sell your concert tickets.
Yeah.
So how they did that was, you'd bring out a song. So we'd bring out Love Me For A Reason in the UK. We'd promote that song by going and doing radio interviews, doing radio shows, doing festivals. We do TV shows, live TV shows, pre-recorded TV shows. We do magazines. We do photo shoots for the magazines. And back in the 90s, there was no digital. It was all on film. So it took twice as long to do everything because, it wasn't instant.
Yeah.
And they were very tiring days. Like you could start at live radio at 5 o'clock in the morning, and you could be doing live TV at 12 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
So then the record company might say, okay, well listen, you've got a week in France next week. So you go to France and you pack to go to France for a week, and you're 3 days into France, and you get a phone call from the record company saying, listen, Key to My Life has just broken in Germany. So instead of you coming home after being in France, we need you guys to head on to Germany for a week. So they go, look, just get all your clothes laundered in the hotel. The record company will cover whatever expenses you have. Just keep cracking on, keep promoting. So then you get to Germany, and Germany have 1 week of your time, but the Germans don't care what the French have just put us through. So the French might have us working 14, 15 hours a day, and then the Germans have us, they're told they have us for a week, so they want to fill as much promotion into that week as they possibly can, forgetting about the fact that we're just human.
Yeah.
And you have to keep going and going and going. There's no time set aside for healthy eating. There's no time set aside for training in the gym. You're literally just grabbing fast food on the go. You're living an unhealthy lifestyle, and then you're in Germany. On the fourth day in Germany, you'll get a phone call saying Belgium has just broken. You got to go to Belgium. And you could be going away. You could be telling your family you're going away for a 3-week promotional tour, and you could be gone for 6 months. Like it was crazy. But in 96, 97, 98 was crazy. But it was crazy for a different reason. It was crazy because of the promotional touring, but the promotional touring then went straight to concert touring.
Okay.
Now, concert touring is not as difficult as promotional touring because you know your hours of the day. When you're doing a concert tour, you don't really have much work to do before 4 o'clock in the afternoon.
Yeah.
4 o'clock in the afternoon, you arrive at the venue, you do a sound check, you might do some sort of a meet and greet if there's any sick children or people that want to meet you, whatever. You do the meet and greet, meet the people. You do your sound check, like I said. Then you go away. You might do a bit of press. You might do local radio. Then you'll come back. You'll have your dinner. Then there'll be an official meet and greet. People that have paid to come and meet and greet you. You do that official meet and greet. Then you might have an hour off. And the hour then is preparation time for going on stage.
Yeah.
Then you go on stage. You do 2 hours on stage. You come off stage. You feel high as a kite. The buzz, the energy.
Adrenaline.
Your adrenaline's flowing through the blood. You can't rest. You can't go asleep. You can't go home to a hotel and go sleep. It's impossible.
Yeah.
I mean, I've tried, believe me. You lie in the bed and you're just staring at the roof, and it's just impossible. So the easiest thing to do is to go down to the bar to socialise. Whatever city you're in at whatever time, somebody always invites you to a club and
Cool.
invites all your team down, and you go and you party, and it might be 4 or 5 in the morning before you actually get to sleep. You're waking up at like 10:30, 12 o'clock, check out the hotel, move on to the next city.
It's just
go to
go,
the next
go.
city, go back, do your sound check. And it's just this constant kind of conveyor. That you're just going and going and going. So we were doing this really long tour. It was like 2 years before we'd had any decent time off. We were coming to do the biggest show of our careers back in Dublin in the RDS. Big outdoor gig for 75,000 people.
Wow.
Considering our first gig was in a trucker's joint off the Nace Road called Towers in Nace, and there was like about 200 people there, and they were all family members. They weren't even fans. I mean, to go from that performance to now coming home to pay to 75,000 people was an amazing success story, and we were buzzing on that. But over the space of the 2 years on the touring, we were introduced to Jack Daniels. Our tour manager was a rock bass player in a band called the Little Angels, and they toured with Van Halen and Bon Jovi, and
Sick, okay.
and he had toured with them all, and he drank Jack Daniels and Coke, so he kind
Jack
of
and
introduced
Coke,
that to
yeah.
us, and we all used to drink Jack and Coke. But I mean, when I say drink it by the bucket load is what we used to do. I mean, you're taking 5 Northside Dublin guys, and you're giving them a chance to travel around the world, stay in fancy hotels and drink for free. So
They're gonna empty the
we
minivan.
did. But in a lot of the interviews and the press articles that came out, Jack Daniels' name came up from time to time. So Jack Daniels found out about this. They got in contact with us, and they wanted to put on an after show party for the end of the tour for us
Class.
by supplying all the drink. So they send over these barrels of silver barrel Jack Daniels, Gentleman Jack, all the different types of Jack Daniels, some of it quite expensive. So we said we'd throw a big party for our family and friends back in Dublin after the show. We had stilt walkers, we had fire blowers, and we actually had the paper mache heads of Boyzone made, like the U2 heads. We had
I saw those, I think. There's a video or something knocking around
somewhere.
online.
So we had them. I didn't particularly like the one of me, by the way. They didn't look anything like me. But anyway, on that night, we were buzzing because we thought, okay, tonight is the biggest gig of our lives. Tomorrow, we're off for 2 weeks. We're all going off to different destinations on holidays with our families the next day. And we were so excited about just going and chilling out and falling asleep and taking it easy.
That was by request, wasn't it?
Maybe. Maybe you're right. So Louis Walsh came into the dressing room that night just before we went on stage, and he said, lads, you can't go on holidays tomorrow. And he said, you have to go to Modena in Italy to sing with Pavarotti. And we were going, yeah. I mean, listen, don't get me wrong. Any band given half a chance to go and perform with Luciano Pavarotti, and you'll notice I said his full name there. I mean, it's such an honour. And he had requested our presence at his big Pavarotti and Friends concert, which is a massive, massive charity event that goes out to billions all over the world. But live, there's over 125,000 people in the audience.
It's a sea of people.
Yeah,
like, it's
a sea of people.
Yeah.
It's an amazing thing. But none of us were in the right frame of mind to make a decision on that. You know, we were so tired. We couldn't see the wood for the trees. We just needed time off.
The holiday was looking good.
The holiday was just looking good. And Louis said, look, guys, you have to go tomorrow. He's sending his private jet to Dublin Airport tomorrow morning. You have to be in the airport at 8:30 tomorrow morning, and you have to go to Modena. I mean, the lineup was phenomenal. It was B.B. King, Joe Cocker, Mariah Carey, Gloria Estefan, Ricky Martin, Lionel Richie.
Wow.
I mean, it was a phenomenal lineup, and we were singing with Pavarotti, doing a duet of No Matter What. Yeah. And then at the end of the show, we come on with all the performers, and we all do one line from the song We Are the World. You know, we are the world, we are the children. So we have to do a line of that, you know. So, I mean, it was an amazing honour, but we were so tired. Anyway, ultimately we decided, right, we have to go.
Yeah.
So, I'm thinking to myself, look, everybody knew me. I like the party. You know what I mean? I enjoy a drink, and, you know, I work hard and I play hard. You know, there's no secret about that.
Nothing wrong.
So, I kind of thought to myself, look, I might be going straight from the bar to the airport, but I'll be there. I'm not going to miss it, you know. So the next morning, needless to say, straight from the bar probably, and I was dying with a hangover. In fact, I don't even think the hangover had kicked in at this point. I think I was still a little bit drunk. Yeah. Nobody else had arrived at that point. I was first to arrive. There was a magazine, I think it was called GQ magazine. We're there to cover the trip to Modena and back with Boyzone going to see Pavarotti, which would have been very credible for a boy band like Boyzone at the time, like a pop group. We were trying to get an older audience. We were trying to expand our audience. So getting a kind of a feature in this magazine would have been a great step towards that. You know. So so there was a journalist and a photographer going to be traveling with us anyway. But the lads found out that there was no gig on the next day. The gig was actually 2 days later.
Okay.
The reason they wanted us to fly the next day was they wanted us to sound check.
Sure.
You know, and sound check is obviously very important when you're singing with Pavarotti. Plus, what we didn't realize was there was a full orchestra and a full session group band. There was like 30 to 60 musicians on stage.
Okay, it wasn't
phenomenal.
just a PA. You know.
No, I mean, it's a big production, huge.
Yeah.
So anyway, we the next day the lads turned up to the airport. They had found out at this stage now that, you know, the gig wasn't until a day later. Now, the reason we had to go that day is Pavarotti's jet was only available that day because I had to go to pick up Mariah Carey the next day.
Okay,
right?
yeah.
So they were going, well, look, there has to be flights we can get from Dublin Airport to Italy and then on to Modena. So now at the time we're very, very famous, and if the five of us are going through the airport together, we get noticed a lot quicker than we would if we were going on our own.
Yeah.
You know, and that could cause a stir. And you know, when you're hungover going through an airport, you've got to be nice to the people that put you where you were. You can't say no when they want a photograph or an autograph. You know. Yeah. And if you're not in the right frame of mind of that, you know, you don't put yourself in that position. You know. So I'm thinking to myself, so they arrive and they say, no, we're not going. We're going to do, you know, commercial flying. We're going to do, you know, chartered flights tomorrow, whatever the case may be. And I'm thinking to myself, that means going back home, getting back into bed, sleeping, and then getting back up, and then having to travel with the lads from Dublin Airport, going through check-in, going through security, going to the airport lounge, traveling over to Rome, connecting onto another flight.
Disaster.
It's just exhausting. So I thought, you know, I'm getting on this plane because it's going to where I need to be.
Yeah.
Ultimately, I was the only one that got on the plane. The other four members of the band went home. Now, it was a good thing I did that because GQ magazine were coming, and if we didn't get on the plane, it was going to be a disaster of a write-up, because they would have said the boys are too big for their,
they didn't show
boots.
up. Yeah.
You know what I mean? They didn't get on a private jet. They were moaning, saying the private jet didn't look good enough, or whatever they were going to say. So I kind of had to save the day. So anyway, the guys went home. I was sitting there with the journalist and our press agent, a couple of members of the record company that were flying with us, and the photographer. And I was sitting on the tarmac because the plane was grounded for half an hour or something because of flight restrictions, because the weather was actually very good, the sun was shining. So the hangover was kicking in, so I decided to top myself up a little bit with the red wine, the little red wine
the
bottles
little
you
bottles,
you get on the plane.
Nice.
So I'm sipping the red wine, talking to the journalist sitting on the tarmac.
Happy days.
And happy as a pig in shite, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
And then they said, okay guys, we're ready to take flight. So I took my seat, and needless to say, as soon as I put the seatbelt on, I fell out cold asleep. And I kind of woke up, I was a bit delirious. I knew we were on a private plane, so I kind of thought, whoa, everything's kind of starting to come to me what I'm doing there.
Yeah. Oh, this is what's happening.
I remember, without even thinking, I remember going down, opening the back door of the plane, and sticking my rear end out and farting. But I didn't expect the fart to be so loud. But the journalist and everybody on the plane heard me fart. They said, well, that's a nice way to start your trip in Italy, Mr. Duffy. You know, so lovely. A little bit embarrassing. Anyway, all I wanted to do now, I think at this stage now, it's probably about 2:30, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And all I wanted to do was get to my hotel room in Italy, get into bed, sleep. The boys arrive in the next morning by maybe, 10:30, 11 o'clock, meet up with the boys, go down, do the sound check, and the gig is that night. Everybody's happy, right?
Yeah.
So I take my clothes off. I'm just about to get into bed. I close the curtains. I make the room as dark as I possibly can because it's the middle of the day. And I'm just thinking, I cannot wait to go sleep. I'm absolutely exhausted. I'm just picturing putting my head on that pillow and sleeping, right? And just as I'm putting the head on the pillow, there's a on my door, right? No, somebody's at my door. I'm going, who the hell is that? So I open the door, and there's this little kind of Italian girl there going, hello, Mr. Keith. Mr. Keith. I go, yes. Your car is waiting for you outside. And I'm saying, what car? Like, what are you talking about? Your car? It is waiting for you outside. You must go. You have 5 minutes maybe. And I said, go where? To do what? Well, you must go to the concert to sound check. I said, the concert's not on till tomorrow. Yes, but you have to go to sound check today. And I said, no, the boys are coming in tomorrow. And at the time, I do all the lead vocals with Brian McFadden now, so that would be no problem. But back then, I wasn't allowed to do the lead vocals. Ronan and Stephen done all the lead vocals. I only done the backing vocals. So as a result, I didn't even know all the lyrics of the lead song. So they're going, no, you must go and sound check with Mr. Pavarotti, I'm going, Jesus, you can't put me on the stage. Anyway, I was absolutely shitting myself. I didn't know what to do, but I threw my clothes on. I jumped in the car, we went down, and my God, the venue, you could see it from miles away. It was this massive big dome type stage with all these marquees, and oh man, it was like the Italian Secret Service were doing all the security backstage, and you have to have a laminate pass with your picture of your face on the laminate to get into the backstage area, and all the backstage dressing rooms were all linked together by a big marquee, and the carpet inside was this really kind of rich velour red kind of carpet, about 1.5 inches thick. It was like you were walking on clouds, and everything was just so special. It was amazing. Yeah. And I was absolutely exhausted, tired. I went up the back steps of the stage, on the backstage, and then I saw the orchestra, and then I saw all the live musicians, and then I saw the big man himself.
You're back up again.
Pavarotti standing there waiting on me, and I was going, oh my God, this is surreal, right? So, hello, nice to meet you. Thanks for having us here. And
oh my God.
I apologise, my band friends, they come tomorrow. We have a big concert in Ireland yesterday, so we had to unwind and blah, blah. And he hadn't got great English, Pavarotti, so it was grand. So then, no matter what starts, the band and the orchestra start playing no matter what, and I'm to do the first verse, so I had to start singing, and I'm kind of going, okay, no matter what they call us, and I start singing it, and I'm thinking, okay, I can do this.
This is good.
I can do this, and I get through the first verse. The second verse, then Pavarotti sings, and he sings full operatic voice, no matter what this.
It's lovely.
It was just mind blowing, man. I go in there pinching myself, going, this is not real. This is crazy, right? So anyway, I got to the chorus where Stephen does, and it's a really, really high bit. And I mean, I suppose if I was breathing properly and if I knew what I was doing, I probably could have hit the note. But on that particular time, on that particular day,
wasn't happening.
I said, I'm going to have to go for it. So I went for it, and I was screaming down the microphone, right? And I just remember the look that Pavarotti gave me on stage, and the look said it all. He was kind of going, who the fuck is this
guy?
And what is he doing on stage with me, you know? I was absolutely mortified. But listen, we got through the sound check, and I ended up going back to the bar in the hotel, and I just thought, fuck, I'll just have a drink, you know. I got a second wind, and Joe Cocker was in the bar, God rest his soul. I mean, God, Joe Cocker's gone now, and Pavarotti's gone now, and so many people that performed on that stage on that day that are no longer with us. Yeah. So God rest them. But I had a couple of drinks with Joe Cocker, and we had a little bit of a race outside. We were joking and messing who could run faster, and he put me up to having a little race, and we had a few drinks on us. That's another story.
Yeah,
totally. I'll get
well,
to
thank
that
God there's
day.
no smartphones.
But it was quite surreal, you know. I mean, I was delighted I went in the end because I had a really amazing day. But I did inevitably get to bed early enough that night, albeit probably quite intoxicated, but I got to bed early enough that day. So the next day the boys arrive, and we go down to the venue, and everybody's there, and all the hustle and bustle is going on, and Buzzing. It's so exciting. And I'm still quite tired and possibly hungover, you know. Our stylists arrive, our hair and makeup, all our team arrive, and we have this big dressing room. And back then, they'd say to you, what kind of rider would your boys like? What you want in the dressing room.
Jack Daniels.
The usual Jack Daniels, vodka, red wine, white wine. I mean, we'd get whatever we needed in case we had our family, our friends with us. That there would be plenty for everybody. A few beers. Sometimes you'd put down just blue M&Ms, and just to see if they'd do it, and you would turn up to dressing rooms and you'd get bowls of just blue M&Ms where somebody's after buying a shitload of bags of M&Ms and picking out all the blue ones, And then they come in and they go, is everything okay? Your rider's okay? And I said, they're peanut M&Ms. We want the chocolate M&Ms. oh, I'm so sorry, Mr. Keith. I'm joking. I can't believe you actually got his M&Ms. That's a true story. But anyway,
that actually happened. That
actually happened. And this story, by the way, this whole show is on YouTube. If you've been in Pavarotti and Boyzone, you'll see.
No, I watched it actually today. It is the spectacle of that.
Yeah,
is
it's phenomenal.
Mental.
I mean, to be honest, I'd forgotten all about it. I mean, Jesus, it was back in '98, so it's how many years ago was that? 22 years ago. It's a long time ago. In fact, my daughter Mia found it online and showed it to me. I didn't even realize it was online.
Out there, yeah.
And I was blown away when I saw. I remember I had real long hair, I had it tied back in a ponytail, and I was wearing a full white
suit. Yeah, and you stood kind of triangular.
I stood triangular beside Pavarotti, and
it's class.
It was class. It was absolutely class. But we're waiting for the performance, and we're backstage, and we've met Mariah Carey's mother, who's from Cavan or something like. She's her mother's Irish,
Really?
Yeah, and we're meeting all these people backstage, and it was just, I suppose, one of those moments in time that you just have to pinch yourself. Is this real? You grow up in the north side of Dublin, and you kind of think maybe I'll get an apprenticeship as an electrician or a carpenter. And I didn't like studying, and I didn't want to go to college, so I didn't know what my future was for me. And all of a sudden, here I am, about to go and perform with Pavarotti. Like, it's unbelievable. So anyway, I'm lying on the floor trying to get 40 winks in the dressing room on this lovely velour red carpet. It was so comfortable. Yeah. And I'm just there, lying there with my eyes closed, and all the people in the dressing room, the boys are in the dressing room, our tour managers in the dressing room. There's all hustle and bustle outside the door with all the different artists going to the different dressing rooms, and all of a sudden I hear a knock at the door, right? So our tour manager, who's our manager in actual fact now, or was until we finished, Mark Plunkett, he opened the door, and there was some lady there going, hello, Mr. Mark, Luciano's wife would like to meet with the boys, is possible? And Mr. Mark said, yes, no problem. He kind of closes over the door, and he shouts to me, Duster, get up off the ground, because I'm lying asleep on the ground. So I get up, go, what's all going on? So we all stand in the line, and Luciano's wife comes in, and we do hello, like a royal lineup type thing. Yeah. We say hello to her, and then she leaves, and I go back to the floor. I'm lying on the floor again, I'm going off into Noddy Land again, and all of a sudden there's another knock at the door. I go and open the door. Mark, our tour manager, opens the door again, and it's the same lady. Go, Mr. Mark, apology, excuse. Luciano's record company label people, they would like to meet with the boys. Is possible? Yeah. One moment, he closes over the door. Duster, get off the floor, get up. So I get up again, standing there again. They come in, hello. So we meet them all again. They leave the room. The door closes. Eventually, I get back on the floor again, close my eyes, and yeah, you got it.
Again.
Another knock on the door. This
Fuck's
woman.
sake.
Mr. Mark, excuse me, I apologize. Luciano's, they would like to meet with the band. Is possible? Yeah, no problem. So they come in. Hello. So at this stage I go, I've given up trying to go to sleep. So I'm sitting on a chair in the dressing room, and I'm just thinking, we've been really nice for this fucking Luciano guy, whoever he is, you know. And I'm saying, and this is true as God, right? I said to the lads, here lads, who is Luciano, by the way? And Ronan went, what? I said, who's this Luciano guy? We're after meeting his wife, we're after meeting his record company, we're after meeting his fucking whole family. Who is he? And they all started to laugh at me. They said, you're serious, aren't you? I said, yes, I'm serious. They said, that's Pavarotti. His name is Luciano Pavarotti. I says, oh, jeez. I had no idea. I thought his name was Pavarotti Murphy.
You thought so
or Pavarotti MacDonald. I didn't realise Pavarotti was a surname. I thought it was his Christian name. So they had a good laugh at my expense on that occasion. But to round the story off, the performance went great. It was an amazing experience. And at the end of the show, like I said to you, all the bands came out on stage together with Pavarotti, and we all were sharing microphones, and we all had different lines of "We Are the World."
Yeah.
So the Italian Secret Service were checking everybody's laminates as we were going through the tunnel from the backstage area in the dressing rooms up onto stage for the last song. So you had to be literally checked before you were allowed onto stage. So all the bands, Mariah, B.B. King, Lionel Richie, everybody's going on. So this journalist from GQ magazine, I'm thinking we really need to give this guy a memory of a lifetime.
Yeah.
Because there's been so much kind of controversy about boys not getting on the plane, turning up late, blah, blah, blah.
Has to have a good ending.
We need a positive story in this magazine.
Yeah.
So let's give this guy a memory. So we were all wearing white suits. And he was wearing a pair of jeans, but he was wearing like a white suit jacket with a t-shirt. So we kind of, like, to the Italian Secret Service, he kind of blended in. So when we were going through security, I grabbed him by the hand, because none of our team were allowed to come with us. They all had to watch side stage. I grabbed him by the hand on his wrist, and I dragged him through the corridor with me. And he kind of didn't know what was going on, but he kind of came with me. Ultimately, I got him on stage. And when this is on TV, and this is actually on YouTube, right?
You can see him.
When the camera pans across, we are the ones that make a brighter day, right? It pans across and Mariah singing and Gloria Estefan, and then you got Shane from Boyzone, then Ronan, then you got B.B. King, Joe Cocker, then I'm there singing, and then then Mikey, then right beside us, we're in the chorus of the song. He's singing it to somebody else's microphone with his hands in the air like he's praising the Lord, and he's singing at the top of his voice, we are the ones that make a brighter day, and he's belting it out, and I'm looking at it going, Jesus, that's amazing. Right? When we got back to the dressing room, our tour manager went, that was genius, Duster, genius. He's up there giving it socks like he's a rock star. He came off stage and he said, that's the best day of my life. He said, like, oh my God, I'm standing on stage with all of my heroes, singing with them, like
singing
the only one not in the music business on stage, the only one with not a million #1 hit songs, singing. It's Jesus, thanks a million, Duster, you know. So it was just a very bizarre trip. Anyway, the magazine came out eventually, and the headline was Keith Duffy, a one-man Led Zeppelin.
Unbelievable.
So yeah, we've great stories like that.
That's an unbelievable story to have, and even like anyone who is listening on Instagram, listen to the clip, because it's going to be clipped. You're going to see the the sea of people that was at that gig, because it's one of those gigs where it's like incomprehensible amount of people. Like you think
it's just an ocean. It's just an ocean of people.
Especially,
and you know
will
what?
It happen again?
In my experience, we've done quite a few gigs like that. Like we played Hyde Park. About 6 years ago, I was doing a show called A Handful of Stars in the West End in London. I think it was 2000 when was the last World Cup?
2018.
2018,
I think, yeah.
I don't think it was 2000. No, I'll tell you when it was. I think it was 2015 it was 2016, and I was in the London West End play, a drama in a stand-up, a straight play in. It's an old Jerry Ken. Was it Bill Roach? It was a Bill Roach play from Wexford called A Handful of Stars, and I was in that show. It was only a fringe theatre show, and we got an invitation to the West End, and we took it, and we moved to the West End, and. Boyzone were offered a massive gig in Hyde Park on the Sunday when the World Cup final was taking place, and it was very funny because on the bill was 10cc and Tom Jones, and Boyzone, and we were doing a 2-hour set. We were on stage at 7 o'clock, so we had like the best slot, you know.
Yeah.
So I had to get the matinee show in the theatre off on the Sunday to be able to do this performance with Boyzone. Now, the theatre I was performing in only held like about 127 people. It was a tiny theatre in the semi-round, not a full round.
Yeah,
semi-round. But to play to 200,000 people or 125,000 people is kind of easy because you don't see the whites of people's eyes.
Yeah.
You know, but when you're in a close place like the Trafalgar Studio, and you're delivering a monologue, 10-page long monologue or something, and there's 127 eyes on you, or 127 sets of eyes on you. I mean, that's the real scary stuff.
Yeah.
That's the real panic, real adrenaline, scary stuff. You know, the bigger the show, you know, the easier, really, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But to give you an example of you know, trying to keep yourself grounded in a crazy world, and to be like, having done what we've done, you know, the show I was doing in the West End was sold out every night. It was a great success. I got the Sunday off, like I said, so the show didn't go ahead on the Sunday because my character was the supporting lead, so the show was cancelled on the Sunday, or so I thought, right?
Yeah.
So I'm in Hyde Park, and we spend the day there. The sun is shining down. Families are after coming out because the weather's so good. You know, 10cc went on. I remember my dad calling me and saying, "What are you up to?" I said, "I'm playing Hyde Park today. 125,000 people have turned up to the park to see us."
Mad, yeah.
And my dad said, "Wow, that must be amazing." I said, "It's just an ocean of people. It's brilliant, you know." And this is Boyzone's, like, this is Boyzone 20 years later.
Yeah.
You know, this is when we
only
come back
a few
together.
years ago. This is
only a
mad,
few
yeah.
years ago, right? So you know, everybody knows all our songs. They know all the lyrics and
Special.
And, 10cc were a great band. I told my dad 10cc were supporting us, and he laughed at me, said, "Don't be silly, son. Don't be silly. 10cc are a much better band than you boys."
Lovely.
You know what I mean? They're a real band. They play instruments on stage. You know.
Thanks, Dad.
Yeah, thanks, Dad. Yeah, lovely. So anyway, we went on and we did the show, and like what Boyzone and the lads in Boyzone always did when we did something big, when we did Top of the Pops, or when we played Wembley, or when we played the O2, or whenever we're in London and we do something of significance,
Sure.
we always go to Benihana's Japanese restaurant, and we celebrate by having sushi and tempura and beautiful Japanese food, and we have a little party for our crew and our band and stuff, and that's how we always celebrate. It's
You're making me
expensive
hungry now.
It's expensive. We don't do it very often. So I did the show that night, and it was an amazing experience, just looking out at an ocean of people. And the next day I get a call to say there's a matinee on the Monday, right? So I've got a hangover, as usual.
Yeah.
It sounds on this interview that all I seem to do is drink. But I have a hangover, and I get a call to say, "Look, you've got to be in Trafalgar Studio. The matinee from the Sunday has been moved to the Monday."
Oh shit!
But
So you didn't know that?
I didn't know that, right?
Okay.
So I've just played to over 100,000 people in Hyde Park on the Sunday. I turn up to play to 127 people on the Monday, kind of thinking, "Oh God."
Yeah.
The stage manager comes out as we're getting dressed and getting ready to go on stage, and she said, "Listen, guys, you might not have to do the matinee show." And we're going, "How come?" And they says, "Well, there's been a mix-up with ticket sales, and people didn't realise the show from Sunday was moved to today, to this Monday. So there's only 7 people after turning up. And the rule of thumb in theatre is, if there's more people on stage than there is in the audience, they cancel the show. Yeah. If there's more people in the audience than there is on stage, the show must go on. So there's only 7 people in the audience. There's 8 in the cast." Yeah. So you're fine. So you know you'll be going.
The rule of thumb.
Don't worry about it. But we got to give it another 5 or 10 minutes. So I'm delighted. Oh God, thank God. You know, I mean, I love doing the show, but I needed a day off. I needed a show off. We still had the night show to do that evening. So I'm after getting out of my outfit and all. I'm getting dressed to go home.
Feet up.
The stage manager comes in and goes, guys, I'm really sorry. Somebody's after buying a fucking ticket. There's now 8 people in the audience. You're going to have to do the show. And we're going, "What, for 8 people?" She goes, "That's the rule. That's the rule of thumb. You've got to do the show." So I'm going, "No way." I played to over 100,000 people yesterday, and now I'm about to go out to play to 8 people.
And you're shit.
Oh my God, this is going to be torture. 2 hours, you know. And when you have an empty theatre like that, you don't get the laughs.
There's no buzz.
Get the laughs on time. Everything echoes off the walls.
Yeah,
it's horrendous. It's like a really bad dress rehearsal, you know.
And there's probably no microphones, is there?
Oh, there's no microphones.
No.
Not in theatre, darling. You have to project your voice. Come on.
That would be a terrible podcast.
That's the first thing we learned, is how to project the voice.
Just teach me.
So anyway, the show must go on. So I go out to do my first scene, and I see a guy kind of sprawled across 3 seats in the front row, trying to make the place look busy, you know. And it's one of my best friends in the world. He's been my best buddy for a very, very, very long time. He's from Manchester. When I was doing Coronation Street for 10 years, he practically lived with me.
Yeah.
He's my tour manager now with Brian McFadden when we do this Boyzlife stuff. He's been a great, great friend of mine for over 20 years. And basically what happened was, because if I knew he was coming to the show, I would have got him a free ticket. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Or I would have bought him a ticket, because sometimes theatre can be scammy. They can be tight with their tickets.
Yeah.
But basically what happened was, he was in London, forgot I was there, saw my name on the billboard outside the theatre, decided to buy a ticket and come and surprise me.
And the only show he did it for was the one with no people.
Exactly. And if he hadn't have bought the ticket, I would have had the night off and we could have went to the pub. And he could have came to see the show that night.
And here's he thinking, doing a great favour.
He's doing me a favour. And we have to do the full show because he turned up and bought a ticket.
And he threw his feet up.
After the show, he came around to the stage door and I said, man, you're a gobshite. He says, what? I said, number one, you should have rang me, I would have got your ticket. But number two, if you hadn't have bought a ticket,
we wouldn't be here
all afternoon. You could have came to see the show tonight and we could have went. I said, jeez. So anyway, what was done was done. But I just remember thinking to myself now, that's being grounded. To be able to perform to 100,000 people one day and perform to 8 people the next day.
That's a range, yeah.
You know, there you go.
There's a kind of funny story, and it's so weird. I was looking at it at an interview you did a few years ago with Boyzone, right? And buried in the interview, you very subtly tell the story about Britney Spears.
Did I?
Yes, it's Mtv Music Awards, Video Music Awards.
Oh yeah. Well, she sat beside me when the MTV Music Awards were in Dublin.
This is a gem.
And she was sat beside me at the awards, and you know, you're sitting beside Britney Spears, who's the biggest kind of pop icon on the planet at the time.
Yeah.
And the award goes to Britney Spears. So she gets up off her chair, she walks down, and she does her acceptance speech. And when you do an acceptance speech and pick up an award, you kind of go backstage and you got to do a lot of photographs and press with your award before you go back to your seat.
Yeah.
So she's gone for about 15 minutes, and then she arrives back, and there's a bit of hustle bustle, and she sits back in her seat. And I said to her, well done, congratulations. And she said, thank you. So then about 2 minutes later, they go, and the award goes to Boyzone, you know.
Unbelievable.
So, we're delighted. The first time we've ever won an MTV award, you know. So European MTV award. So we go down and I do the acceptance speech, and the boys are there, and the boys say a few bits and pieces.
Yeah.
We do the press, we do the photographs, and we go back to our seats. Yeah. And I reached over and I said in her ear, I went, anything you can do, I can do better. And she just laughed at me, you know. So we went on and we're chatting, and then about 5 minutes later, and the award goes to Britney Spears.
Oh,
so
again.
She disappears, you know, and she goes back, and eventually when she goes back and sits down, she reaches over to me and she goes, anything you do, I do it better than you. Right? So it was just a bit of banter, you know. Yeah. So that was grand. And then about 5 minutes later, and the award goes to Boyzone. So we went down for our second award, and it was that time people might remember Shane Lynch had a few drinks on board, and he exploded, cursing and swearing down the microphone to the press and the media in Ireland, who had us breaking up every week in the papers. He just let the press, decided to give the press what for. I think ultimately we broke up 2 weeks later. So it was a bit of a waste of time.
Wrong, yeah.
But I went back to Britney Spears then and went, anything you do, I do it better than you know. So that was, we had a bit of crack, and she was quite, you know, she was just hanging out with her management crew and stuff at the time, and
seemed to be a good sport, like.
She was a good sport, and we were all hanging out backstage after the gig in the Harry's bar, and one of the guys, one of our security, our manager, came over and says, Britney wants to know, would you like to go back and have a cocktail in her hotel? And I said, yeah. I said, that would be lovely. I said, do you see the woman over there, the big 8-month pregnant woman in the green dress?
Just put that past her.
Can she come with us? Because that's my wife and she's pregnant with my baby. So he's, well, maybe it's not a good idea.
Yeah, perhaps not.
So that was a bit of fun.
So, like, just staying on Boyzlife then, which has been like wildly successful for you guys, since like even the concept of it is like incredible. And I've been to one of the first gigs and I've been to a recent gig, and they're just, well, before the pandemics aside, who came up with that idea, or how was that phone call? What was the kind of what was the buds of that kind of creation?
It was literally just after I had done a handful of stars in the West End. I kind of felt that, what do I do after that? Because I loved the straight acting, and I never would have given myself the ability to do that. I mean, I have Coronation Street to thank for the confidence and the experience to be able to go and to do theatre. My first theatre show, it was actually written by Fiona Looney, who was an old friend of mine going way back. And she wrote a show called Dandelions. And she got in contact with me and said, look, have you ever had any interest in doing a straight play in a theatre? And I thought, well, like acting and stuff. And she said, yeah, well, that's generally
that's how it goes.
You know, and I said, well, no. She said, well, look, you've done years in Coronation Street now, and you know what you're at. Would you give it a go? I've written this play, and we've got some very, very strong female characters in the play, and we need a strong male character.
Yeah.
So I read the show, and I really liked it. And the basis of the show was basically kind of two next door neighbours living beside each other. Deirdre O'Kane was playing my next door neighbour.
Yeah,
and her best friend was played by Pauline McGlynn, Mrs. Doyle.
Yeah.
And my wife was being played by a lady called Dawn Bradfield, a fabulous Irish actor. And basically the storyline was I'd had an affair 15 years ago with my next door neighbour, and it was ironic that we bought the house next door to her by coincidence.
Okay.
Myself and my wife couldn't have babies, so we went and adopted a baby. I think it was in Vietnam or something like that. We adopted a Vietnamese baby because we struggled to have kids of our own. And my next door neighbour had a 14-year-old son.
Yeah.
And over the space of the play and the time running of the play, it kind of becomes maybe apparent or real that he might actually be my son.
Yeah.
But he's been reared as my next door neighbour's son. You know what I mean? But like I said, 15, 14 years ago, she had a one-night stand with me, and the penny starts to drop. I can't have my own kids with my wife, and he's my son.
Yeah.
And the thing about it is that if you love him enough, you got to let him go. You know, so there's a whole story within that. But that was my first stage performance, and I loved it. And it was, you know, it went down very, very well. It was sold out everywhere we went. And actually, in fact, we done a second run of it and sold out again. And then my ultimate kind of stage performance came along when Druid, which would be one of the most respected kind of drama societies in Ireland.
Big Maggie.
Maggie, yeah. So Gary Hines, one of the biggest award-winning directors in Broadway, in the West End and in Dublin, approached me and asked would I perform and play this character called Teddy Healan in Big Maggie.
That was amazing. I went to see that.
John B. Keane.
John B. Keane, yeah.
And I was in that show. That was an amazing experience. I worked with some phenomenal actors that are flying in Hollywood and all over the world now. I mean, Charlie Murphy and Sarah Green, and you know, those two girls alone are flying the flag all over the world right now, doing great stuff. Yeah. So you know, looking back, I mean, what an honor that was to be given the opportunity to work with such talent. And again, Big Maggie was brought back the second time, and I got to do that a second time. We sold out everywhere. It was brilliant. And then this Billy Roach play came along. This Fringe Theatre in London, Billy Roach play, A Handful of Stars, came along, and like I said, we got to move to the West End. And when we were finishing up on that, I realised, you know, when I was in Boyzone, I didn't do a lot of the lead vocals. I only ever did the backing vocals, and I really, really wanted to do the lead vocals. And I'd written some songs, and I had sang lead vocal on some of the songs that I had written, but they were never picked to be. They were album tracks and they were B-sides, but they were never released single. Yeah. So I'd kind of given up on that. My confidence wasn't great with that type of stuff, and I kind of felt that I get great job satisfaction from becoming these characters in these stage plays, and that's really where I get my buzz from. I suppose that's the most exciting buzz that I get is from stage performances. Stage, yeah. And I thought, what would be the ultimate stage performance? And I thought, a one-man show. I thought, if I was to write my own drama, my own one-man show, even if it was only like a 50-minute monologue or something, you know, what would I write it about, and how do I do it, and how do I go about doing it, and who do I get behind me? But that's ultimately what I'd love to do. I'd love to do a one-man show. Yeah. I know I love being on stage. I know I like to tell stories. Yeah. How do I make this work? So I was considering all different aspects of it, and I ended up talking with Des Bishop one day. Des Bishop, who everybody will know, is kind of an Irish-American stand-up based here in Ireland for years, and he's such an intelligent, clever man. I mean, the guy never went to school in Ireland, and he learned to speak Irish, I think, in 2 days. We all got forced to learn Irish for 13 years, and we can't speak a word of it, and he learned how to speak it in a year or two. Yeah. He went off to China and learned how to speak Chinese and did his stand-up show in Chinese on Chinese TV. He's an incredibly intelligent and driven man. And I was talking to him one day, and I told him what I was thinking, and he said, you must have some stories to tell. I mean, you must have some backstage stories. You must have some phenomenal stories. If you think about it, you must have some like people that you performed with, you know. Yeah. Obviously the Pavarotti story came to mind, and there was a million stuff. And he said, look, you know, at the end of the day, just tell the stories. Do like a kind of an autobiographical style show. Yeah. Write down these anecdotes. Do a couple of songs. He said, and find your feet, and that would be the way to do it. Yeah. He said, like, remember when you're writing these stories that, you know, never let the truth get in the good way, or the way of a
in
good
the way of a good story. Yeah,
the
sure,
only people at those gigs were you and whoever else is there. Nobody's going to call you a liar, you know.
Yeah.
Now, I didn't have to make any of the stories up because I had enough of them in the bank.
They're mental themselves. Like,
so I start putting together these stories. I start finding these clips, like you were saying. I went on YouTube and I started finding these clips. So what I was doing, any story that I decided to tell within this. So now I wasn't performing as an actor. Now I was actually being Keith Duffy on stage, and I was actually telling my story. Right? So it was close enough to a one-man show. So I was getting ready to kind of get into performance, get into rehearsals, find a, I had done a big deal with the Hilton Hotel Group globally. So instead of going to theatres, I was going to do this show in function rooms in Hilton hotels across the UK, across the world. It was a global gig.
Brilliant.
Some gigs you'd have 300 people, some gigs you'd have 1,600 people, depending on the size of the function room.
Yeah.
But I was getting cold feet, and I was going to do about 5 or 6 songs, which would mean me singing the full songs on my own.
Solo, yeah.
And I was starting to get cold feet a little bit with the vocals and performing of the songs and stuff. And I kind of start thinking maybe I should bring somebody with me. Maybe I should team up with somebody, get an MC in maybe to do a Q&A with me on stage, and then get the MC to sing the songs with me, so we take a verse each or something. And I was playing around with ideas like that, and I was playing golf one day, and Brian McFadden and myself go right back to 98.
I'm kind of annoyed I didn't get that text.
Sorry?
I would have done it.
You were about 2 at the time, I think, Mikey.
Oh, fair enough.
Well, Brian and I played a lot of golf together, and obviously I know I'm going back to 98 when Westlife basically were Boyzone support act. They used to open our show. And I was playing golf one day, and he said he was playing Whelan's with his band on this particular Saturday night. Yeah. And I said, geez, I'd love to come in and see you. So myself and my son Jay and a few of our mates all got together, and we went in to see Brian's show. And
great venue as well.
Brian's up there playing guitar, singing, and he's written some fantastic songs. He's written some brilliant songs. I mean, Brian has an amazing voice. He's such a talent. He really, really is. And I didn't really know how much of a talent he was until I went to that show, and he blew the roof off the place. It was phenomenal. Yeah. Afterwards, we're up in the dressing room having a couple of pints of Guinness, as you do, and he goes, "What are you up to at the moment?" I said, "Well, I've written this show about, it's kind of like an autobiographical show. I'm going to sing a few Boyzone songs, and I'm going to tell stories about 20 years in the music business from my perspective, and show clips of of memories of going out to RTE for the first time when we had to get on the roof, and RTE was overtaken by fans who sprayed all over the windows and the ground outside, and I've TV footage of all this type of stuff I'm going to show, and our first big gig in Wembley, and just kind of reminiscing with the fans."
Yeah.
He goes, "Oh Jesus, that sounds amazing," he said. I'd love to do something like that. And I thought, well, hang on a minute, buddy. Why don't you do it with me?
Cool.
I said, we'll rewrite the show. We'll bring in your stories from Westlife. We'll do songs between us, Boyzone and Westlife songs. Yeah. He says, what will we call it? And I said, well, we could call it Boyzlife. And he goes, what about Westzone? And I says, well, we could call it Westzone, but I think that's a car park at Dublin Airport. I think we're better off sticking to Boyzlife, So that's how
Westzone.
That's where Boyzlife was born. And we went out. The show was called Stories, Laughter and Music. We went into rehearsals, and Brian pretty much spent 2-3 hours a day with me, vocal training, getting me ready for lead vocals, pushing me confidence, getting me confident enough to be able to take on, the mission ahead of us. Yeah. And we worked really, really closely together. We sold out that tour in 4 hours. The whole of the UK sold out in 4 hours. Wow. Then we start getting invited to do like festival shows, and we were doing festival shows, just doing 1 or 2 songs. Yeah. We came back with Stories and Laughter Music Stage Part 2. That sold out in 4 hours. It started growing. So then we started doing bigger venues, and then through social media we were asked by our fans, look, we love the show, it's brilliant, the stories are great, but you have so many hit songs, you're only doing 6 or 8 songs in 2 hours. Could you not do more songs? We'd love to hear the songs. So we looked down and we realised between the two of us we'd over 21 UK number 1 songs. Wow, so our back catalogue was huge. We could pick whatever set list we wanted.
You could do a full concert of number 1s.
We could do a full concert of number 1s. So that's what we did. We went out and we started doing concerts. Brilliant. And we did it to back and track initially to save on money, and we were playing small venues. We got to a stage that we were playing these venues called the O2 Academy venues, which are kind of more like guitar
they're younger
bands.
Kind of.
Yeah. They're more rural kind of guitar band venues, that hold maybe anything from 300 to 900 people. You've got your open bar.
Gig.
Yeah, the gig style, gig style. And we didn't have a live band. We were only playing the backing tracks, And these gigs didn't really sell that well. Yeah. And we kind of thought maybe we're done. Maybe the idea is done. Yeah. Maybe we need to kind of go back to the drawing board and figure out what's next. We really believed it wasn't done in our heads, but we couldn't. The ticket sales have to speak for something, and they weren't selling out. So we kind of thought we'd hit the end of the road, and this promoter came along, and he said, "Guys, I want to promote your next tour." This guy said, I want to put 35 concerts on in the best venues around the UK. And we're going,
okay,
is this guy mad? Can you not see that we're not even selling out the small academy shows?
Yeah.
These places are like the Gaiety Theatre in Dublin, like the Olympia. He wanted
so
to put us in the
fancier.
best theatres, the best city halls around the UK.
Wow.
Now, I'd already played all these venues with Boyzone, and Brian had with Westlife, so we knew the capacity, the size of these venues.
Yeah.
He says, I want to put a full live band behind you. I want to put drums and keys and guitar and bass.
Adds a different element.
I want to turn this into a proper show.
Yeah.
And we were delighted. He was willing to put up the money. He was willing to give us a minimum guarantee. We couldn't lose on this.
Were you nervous when you took the deal?
Well, no, because it was a no-brainer for us.
Yeah.
It was a huge earner for us, and it was giving us the opportunity to do what we love to do.
Sure.
He was taking all the risks. But
Yeah.
we were kind of going, is this guy mad? Anyway, he put the tickets on sale. We were still doing the Academy gigs. He put the new tour on sale, and it sold out everywhere. We were
Unbelievable.
going, what were we doing wrong?
It was the venues.
How come? It was the venues.
Yeah.
Our
okay.
fans wanted a comfortable seat. Our fans wanted to be able to see us in a comfortable environment. They didn't want to go and stand all night in a rock
sticky
venue.
floors.
They wanted to go to a nice theatre.
Yeah.
And that must have been what it was, because all of a sudden we're selling out all over the place again. And that's what I was saying to you. We were in the middle of a sold out gig when this whole pandemic started.
Yeah.
We were in the middle of we'd over 160 dates in our diary.
Yeah.
And it was phenomenal. So we were blown away by it, and thank God we brought out the album then Strings Attached, which what we did was we recorded our favourite Boyzone and Westlife songs with the live the Royal Philharmonic Orchestra, an 84-piece orchestra.
Wow.
And we recorded all our favourite Westlife and Boyzone songs with the orchestra. We released it. It was supposed to be released way back in Christmas, then Mother's Day. It kept getting postponed and put off. Eventually we decided to let it go in July. We released it in July, and it hit number 1 in the iTunes charts in the UK and in Ireland, and it's been a phenomenal success. Unfortunately, we haven't been out to promote it or to gig
tour the album,
tour the album because of pandemics. But it was amazing to be in lockdown and have a number 1 album. And it's my first number 1 album outside of Boyzone. It's my first kind of personal
it's special,
achievement
yeah,
in
and
the music business. Yeah. So Boyzlife is very special to me now, and I'm on the phone to Brian and our management and the record company every day. Our first studio album is going to come out next year. We've already got a few songs written. I'm very excited about the new sound of Boyzlife. It's a whole new entity for me, and if I'm honest with you, I'm getting the most job satisfaction doing this gig than I've ever had in any gig I've done, because
Wow.
I really feel like I'm bringing the full package to the stage now. I've done the Boyzone thing for over 20 years. I've done the acting thing in Corrie for 10 years. I've done this theatre stuff. I've rounded and polished my performance. Brian has been an amazing help and guru with the vocal ability and singing. So I go out on stage confident now. I sing the songs. I sing the lead vocals.
Yeah.
Nobody seems to put their fingers in their ears. Everybody seems to have a great time, and
It works.
And Brian and I are loving it. So we can't wait to get back.
Well, the evolution of it has been fantastic, and I was at one of the earlier gigs, and to see it go from that to being the supergroup that it is now, and to being a real, it's a real unit now. Which is fantastic. I guess just before we wrap up, I have one question to ask you. If you could, you've talked about performing with Pavarotti, you've talked about Coronation Street, and even theatre gigs. If you could go back and do one big gig show, Corrie, whatever, what would the one thing you'd like to go back and do one more time again?
That's a very, very good question, because I've been very fortunate to have done some incredible things in my career. I mean, honestly, a lot of my dreams have come true already. I'm very blessed. The experiences that I've had with the Bee Gees, the experience I've had with Pavarotti, the experience I've had with U2, who are my heroes.
Yeah.
I grew up listening to U2. I grew up playing the drums. Larry Mullen Jr. is to this day my hero, but I kind of know him now, which is kind of bizarre.
Weird, yeah.
Larry was very, very good to us when our good friend Stephen Gately passed away.
Yeah.
So to pick one would be very, very difficult. To relive one of the highlights of my life, I suppose, the night before the Pavarotti flight was going back to playing our first big gig in our hometown of Dublin, coming home to Dublin after spending so much time away from home, coming home, seeing our fans, seeing our families, seeing our friends. I remember that feeling of coming down. The way we entered the stage was like a flight
box
case coming down
wasn't
in a
it?
box. Yeah, and everybody thought we were in the we supposedly we were in the box, but there was a trapdoor in the box and we were under the stage.
Don't say that.
When the box landed, we'd climb into the box and climb out of the box, and to hear that roar of our home crowd in Dublin. Over 70,000 people just literally roaring and screaming for us.
Special.
Like the hairs stand up, and the hairs are standing up in the back of my neck now as I'm telling you. But it was just an amazing experience, and I've got to relive it a few times. So yeah, I can pick any one of those nights, but I think to relive that size of that audience again would just be phenomenal. That's not what I want to do.
Yeah.
You know, on an ongoing basis.
Sure.
I get a lot more satisfaction out of theatre gigs. I mean, there's an old saying going, stadiums are for the bands, arenas are for the fans. Okay?
Nice.
Stadiums are for the bands, ego, right? And arenas are for the fans. Because when a fan goes to see a show and they're in Croke Park or Wembley Stadium and they're down the back, they're looking at a television screen. They can't see anybody on stage.
Yeah.
But when you go to see your favourite band in an arena, you're close enough to actually see the people on stage.
Yeah.
So you know, you're giving back to the fans. You know, you make a lot more money doing stadiums.
Yeah.
Than
Don't
you have to do 10 arenas to make the amount of money you make in one night doing a stadium. But the arenas and the theatre halls are what I love the most. I love those, especially the theatre halls, because they're much more up close and personal. And you see the whites of people's eyes.
Yeah.
And it's a journey you go on together for 2 hours.
Well, it goes back to the thing where it's like, you know, you say to someone, "Oh yeah, did you hear Adele's new album, or did you hear Ed Sheeran's new album?" And very few, but people will say, "You know what? I saw him in the Olympia at the start," and they say, "I'd never go and see him again because they'll never be able to replicate that kind of thing." You know,
yeah.
Which is 100%. I agree with you with the theatre thing. It's a special experience going to a theatre, and I hope I'm in one of those theatres when all this stuff is over.
Sure. Listen, you were one of our crew for years on the road at Boyzone.
Well, I might be looking for a job when all this ends.
Well, don't worry, we'll find something for you to do.
Well, thanks very much, Keith, and thanks for coming on. I really appreciate having you, and it's been a pleasure to sit down and hear a few stories.
No, listen, absolutely my pleasure. Thanks for having me on, and good luck with the podcast. I think it's brilliant. Fair play to you, buddy.
Once again, thank you very much to Keith for coming on Backchat and sharing some great stories with us. I mean, there's some gems there, and it is truly a testament to his great career, and I hope to see Boyzlife back on stage as soon as possible. But for now, I'm going to leave you with Keith's Instagram, which is at official Keith Duffy. Go and follow the Backchat podcast at back.chat podcast on Instagram, and I'll see you next Friday for the second episode of Back Tackle. So until then, have a great weekend and see you.